through an example to make this a little bit more concrete. So I made up a paper that Bart, Scarlett, and I authored in a made-up journal, and you'll notice the paper is in press. That's important. So that means that it hasn't been published yet. But we submitted the paper to the manuscript submission system, so we have a manuscript submission ID. So let's go through our authors. Bart is our first author. He is not only the first author, but he's using his NIH award to support the research in this paper. I'm a second author. I use some of my NIH-supported time to write this paper, but it's not my NIH award. It's actually my mentor's award, who's Peter. So Peter's not an author of this paper, but his grant is supporting part of the paper. And then Scarlett, our senior author, has no NIH support, but she did help write the paper. So the first question, who addresses copyright? So in this example, of course, the awardee institution is responsible for ensuring that the NIH-supported authors don't sign anything that prevent them from complying with the public access policy. So Bart needs to make sure that the publication agreement allows him to comply with the policy, and I need to make sure that the copyright agreement we sign allows me to comply with the policy, because even though I'm not a PI, I'm supported by NIH funds, and so these rules fall upon me to carry forward. Now, interestingly, if I don't follow through and I don't follow the rules, it's my PI who gets in trouble, not me. So Peter's on the hook for my actions here. The next question is, who deposits the paper to PubMed Central? Well, this could be a task that any of the authors could do. So Bart could do it, I could do it, Scarlett could do it, even though she doesn't have any NIH support. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we figure this out in advance. Now, if we're working with a Method D publisher where they're going to submit the final peer-reviewed manuscript to the manuscript submission system on our behalf, they're going to include a corresponding author email. And the manuscript submission folks are going to take that email and they're going to send it to whoever that email is and ask them to complete the submission process. Corresponding author is usually the first author, although you could probably make arrangements with your publishers to do something different. So that corresponding author needs to know that they're going to get this email from the NIHMS and they need to move forward. And if they don't, the manuscript is going to get stalled, it won't get posted to PubMed Central, and these two awards will go out of compliance. The next question to think about is who reports the paper? So who includes that PubMed Central ID or manuscript submission ID in the citation? Well, under this scenario, Bart would when he writes his progress report, or he would if he includes it on his biosketch. I would when I would include this paper on my biosketch because I authored it and it fell under the public access policy. Peter would when he writes his biosketch because the paper arose from his award, so he needs to report it. Scarlett would if she were writing any kind of application to NIH and she cited this paper because it fell under the public access policy and it was NIH supported and she was an author. So I thought at this point it's a good time for a short break, and I'm wondering if we have any questions that we could answer verbally.
Absolutely. We have quite a few questions that have come into the queue. Neil, Sarah is asking if there's any known journals who have copyrights agreements that do not comply with the NIH submission requirements.
The answer is no. As far as I know, every journal has agreed to comply with the policy and have their papers posted, and we've posted well over 300,000 papers at this point. So the journals have been very accommodating. What's important is that the authors let the journals know in advance that they need to comply with the policy. I think that's just, a collegial thing to do.
Great. Can an author submit a PDF of the published article if the journal itself would not normally submit that?
That's a tricky question because the author may not own copyright to the PDF, but the author does have much clearer set of rights to the author manuscript, and that's why our policy is focused around author manuscripts, not publisher PDFs.
Okay. Uh, Lindsay's asking, can the already published journal article version be deposited into PMC if it's already out there?
I'm sorry, can you just
Can
repeat
the
that?
already published journal article
Uh-huh.
be deposited into PMC?
Yes. So if you're, for some reason, you fell out of compliance with the policy, there's been a paper that was posted some time ago, but it falls under the policy, you can still go ahead and come into compliance with that paper.
Lori is asking, does direct funding mean this only applies to prime awards, or does it also apply to subawards or pass-through funding?
It does apply to subawards and subcontracts. What the issue with direct funding means that the funds directly apply to either the work that's being reported in the paper or directly support the activities of the paper itself. So writing the paper, paying for any kind of publication costs, and so forth. And generally we tell authors that their business offices can help them determine what's direct funding or not. A good rule of thumb is if the PI feels the paper should be included in their publication report or their progress report, then that's direct funding. Then they're telling us this is what I did with the grant funds that you gave me.
Thank you. Does the final copy of the manuscript have to have track changes showing?
No, it does not have to have track changes. The system, actually, Bart's team built it, is very flexible. It can take documents in virtually any kind of electronic format, and track changes or not track changes, I think they'll figure out a way to make it work.
Nicely done, Bart. Okay, so how far back should one go in terms of depositing papers when they're NIH funded?
Well, the policy became a requirement as of April for all papers published as of April 7, 2008. So if you have papers, papers going back to that date, accepted for publication as of April 7, 2008.
For an older article, what if the authors can no longer locate the final manuscript?
Well, then in those cases, I think we will take the PDF of the final published article, but we need the publisher's permission. Is that right, Bart? Do you want to chime in on that one? Yeah, the question was what happens if it's an older article and the author manuscript's no longer available?
Oh, that's a good question. The author is going to have to figure out what version was the one that was final, accepted, peer reviewed that the journal took in, and that's what they need to submit to us. If they could work out something where the journal would allow them to submit the final PDF, then that's acceptable as well. The key, though, is what rights does the author have with the materials that they're submitting?
And so I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I'm assuming then, as an author, if I'm having an issue with this and I don't know what to do, the best person to contact might be my program officer at NIH?
Actually, that's a good question. I would say probably the best person to contact for that would be the NIH help desk, the public access help desk, I'm sorry, which is public access at nih.gov.
Okay.
I'm sure their program officer, if their program officer couldn't answer it, they would send it to us anyway. But yeah, our help desk can answer that kind of question. Shall we move on?
Shall we move on? We do have some more questions. I think you've answered some of them. And so let's move on. And when we get towards the end, we'll get back to whatever questions we have time for.
Right. So thank you, Megan. So everything we've talked about has been our policy and working practice now for several years. But we have some new things happening as well. So I want to talk about what those changes